You're listening to The Bon Marie Show. It's 8 in the evening. Tune in every night at 8 to listen to The Bon Marie Show on Irish News Radio or ITV.
Bon Marie Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. If you'd like to contact us, it's news@irishnews.net. Today is Gruesome Tuesday, and we normally talk about the horrific practices of what's happening in Islam. But because the UN is a major part of this week, because as Ireland has signed it, and we're going to look into why and how it all came about. And this is destruction of Europe. There is no return. Anybody who has signed that, it has signed our death warrant. It is the end of our cultures. Will be the end of our country. There will be mass rapes on a scale that Europe has never seen before, and mass murders that Europe has never seen before. Any country that has signed that has signed a warrant worse than death. What is coming down our way is a very, very scary. Particularly for Ireland, has a small population and it has no government in power for its people. Its government that is running is mainly a mix of non-Irish or half-Irish that have a complete distaste and disrespect for the Irish and our culture and our heritage, and wants a destruction and an end to it. And it has brought on the destruction. We have signed this. We will be flooded by migrants from North Europe, from North Africa and Asian countries that are mainly Islamic, because of the UN. The Irish government did it for the EU and their pay pack. As I said, we don't have a government for the Irish people. UN and Islam is very much mixed. Majority of the countries in the UN are Islamic, which is why it's so corrupt. The Chief Counsel for Human Rights is Saudi Arabia. That just gives you a hint how corrupt it is when they chop people's heads off at a drop of a hat, particularly women's. They have absolutely no human rights, especially for women. They can't even drive. They're hidden away like slaves, like dirt on your shoe. Men marry 4 women and have sex slaves. Women are worth and have no value. Children are married off. Childbirths happens. Nothing is stopped, and the UN does not talk about any Islamic country. In fact, it's protect and cover up. In recent years, the representations have become more powerful and dangerous. As I said, the Chief Counsel of the Human Rights is Saudi. They have received special treatment at the UN. Bon Marie Show on ITV.ie and Irish News Radio. Today is Gruesome Tuesday. We will be talking about Islam and what day is not gruesome. But this week is very, very sad because the country has been taken. Our government, criminal government, the anti-Irish government, has signed the Irish death warrant. The ancient Celtic heritage will die off with our race and die a painful death as the UN agreement is signed, and no criticism of Islam will be allowed. We will not be allowed to speak about mass migration as you will be picking your children, our children, out of ditches, our family members. There will be no criticism of Islam or the mass migrants that have entered from third world countries who come from a violent ideology and a hatred towards the women, female gender. The women of Ireland are in extreme danger and have no idea what the UN means. Majority of the Irish think it's something to do with peacekeeping. Far from peacekeeping. It ended up peacekeeping in the 90s when they have Islamic countries, the most powerful in the UN, as in Saudi Arabia, Chief Council of Human Rights. That should have woken everybody up to know that it is not a peacekeeping. When you have the Chief Council of Human Rights, a country that chops off women's heads, that is allowed marry 4 women, but if a woman marries 2 men or even sits beside a man or chats beside a man, she will get stoned to death. To put that country as the Chief Council of Human Rights should have been huge sirens going off. But of course, the governments were more interested in the money. And to hell with the people and the prices that they will pay. They also put Saudi, and Ireland was one of the countries to sign in Saudi on the Women's Council. Women are dirt on their feet from the time they're born. They've gender selection abortions, and it's seen as quite wrong. They don't have any respect or life value on women, and that is what the government have signed. Rules to conduct in conformity with Islamic laws itself to impose, touching on Islam, Islamic alternatives to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, defamation of Islam, disregarding the regimes and the officials threatened Rushdie's life on a satanic verses of the Quran. Rushdie explained the Islamic verses in the Quran, and his life was threatened. In 1990, the UN changed. It became the Cairo Declaration on Islam Conference on Foreign Ministers to accept the Cairo Declaration of the Human Rights in Islam. So they shortened this, and you remember the letters there because they will shorten it so that you don't realize what it is. Cairo as in Egypt. So they were forced to adopt this Cairo Declaration of Human Rights in Islam. So we all know Islam has no human rights. All rights and freedoms is spectacle the subjects to Islam Sharia Article 25. 4. Protection of the human rights in Islam countries gives supremacy over human rights. So Islamic laws gives supremacies over our human rights. In 1997, gives authority within 26 members, subcommissions, Afghanistan and women, so that they try to bring in human rights for Afghanistan women. But because Islamic countries give supremacies over their human rights, so as far as they're concerned, that as long as it's under Islamic rule, then that is the human rights. Similar or indeed impossible to reopen discussions on issues, pragmatic and constructive steps to counter the negative propaganda against Islam. So all are more interested, a bit like England and most of the countries, about counteracting people finding out about Islam and the truth about Islam. 25 pages on anti-Semitism, but doesn't mention any evidence of defamation of Islam. So this was all signed and put through, even though no evidence of anybody speaking badly about Islam. That wasn't the truth. or that didn't happen, but that didn't matter. They signed it, but there would be no defamation of Islam. Under the agenda as racism, negotiations with the EU and the US, so even non-Islamic countries, would have to follow Islamic rules on defamation of Islam through the UN. Leading threats from Pakistan, ambiguous ambassador, that the EU and others maintain their position. So basically, he was threatening the EU and others that there would be war unless they agree to signing. The NGO, Sudan, Pakistan, Algeria, Tunisia, Lebanon, Senegal, Ethiopia, Turkey, India. Prohibition to discuss about certain political aspects of Islam, contradicting the right of freedom or opinion of expression. So even at that, you're not even allowed have an opinion. You don't even have the freedom to have an opinion or express an opinion. And that goes far from media outlets like what I'm doing. Just a general discussion. We don't have the freedom to have an opinion. So police thoughts now. So even if they suspect you thinking of something, you could be in trouble. You don't have the option to have an opinion. Promoted by Article 6, reference to Sikh hierarchical practice human rights 1. Women is equal to a man in human dignity. Right, so this really is where the language, you have to watch the language. Human dignity, so they have dignity together, and has the right to enjoy as well as the duties to perform. So they don't tell you what duties that is, but that is Islamic duties. And the duties to a woman is from the age of 9, she becomes a woman. And at the age of 9, she can be married off. Now, she can be married off beforehand, but at the age of 9, she is legally a woman in Islam. And if there is a crime, she will crime as a fully fledged adult. Now, men don't become adults until 14 teens, but girls become a fully fledged adult by the age 9 because of Muhammad, who had sex with Aisha at the age of 9. It's pretty scary stuff. Like just reading through these pages of how it changed back in the 90s, and they brought in new laws to protect and the stop of criticism of Islam or anybody even understanding Islam, or the fact that you would be allowed to speak about it. This is what's brought in, and this is what's coming, and it is a very, very scary thing. It is worse than communism. There is no speaking. There's not allowed. You're not allowed to think about it. You're not allowed to have any freedoms. And this is what the Irish treacherous government has signed off. And the poor innocent fools of Ireland think still it's something to do with peacekeeping or allowing safe travel of migrants, which even in itself is a disgrace. To allow people come here, that when there's 10,000 Irish homeless, when there's people dying on the streets, to give homes, Irish homes, to Africans coming here and let the Irish die in the streets. It's shocking. It is scary. And these people come, not innocent little children. These are fully grown men. And they come with warped ideas of women and warped ideas of children. And this has been signed to without even explaining to the Irish what their lives will be like. That this is the end of the Irish heritage. That they will be destroyed and wiped out. This is the famine again, but even worse. Because at least, as I've said before, during the famine, the Irish knew who their enemy was. They have no idea that this treacherous government has signed off worse than a death warrant. A death through torture. That every weekend you'll be wondering whether your children will make it home, whether they can even leave the house. They will not have a life because you can't let your children go, particularly your daughters, to a nightclub. to a disco, anywhere near these people, because they will murder and gang rape them out of a hobby. This is destruction of Ireland and the Irish nation to come. Didn't mean to be a gruesome Tuesday, but every time you talk about Islam, you realise how gruesome this is and how innocent these fools are that have no idea of what is coming down our way. Within the next few months in the new year, you will see these migrants coming in, flooding. They will become higher populations in each area in Ireland. And when they become a higher population, that's when the danger comes. That's when the mass raping comes. That's when the killing comes. That's when you'll be digging your children out of ditches on the roadside. That is the new year. And there is nothing now that the government has signed this, there is nothing that can stop it. We don't have a real government, and our votes are worth nothing. They're all rigged. We're living in the last days of actually Irish heritage people. Whether they will fight back, whether they can fight out, whether they will be wiped out, is very much what will be seen in the new year. It is the end of Ireland as we know it. And that wonderful, beautiful, smiling, happy people will become a very different people in a very short time. The innocence of them will go, and if and how they can fight back. But they don't even realise the main enemy is the government. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Sinn Féin, people before profit. That is their real enemy who are out to end Ireland. The migrants themselves are pretty much used, but unfortunately they come from such a violent ideology that that's why they're dangerous. Not really the fact that they're put here, but they're not from a civilised country, and you can't just transport them and expect that Islam will just disappear, or their thoughts of women will just suddenly become Western or Irish views. They will never become Western Irish. And as England has proved, 2 or 3 generations, they become more Islamic and more dangerous and more angry that that country is not Islamic and more pushed to make it Islamic. As they push these 6 huge mega mosques into Ireland, massive amount of Muslims will come. Mass amount of deaths and rapes are to come. The end of the Irish heritage, culture and our people. For what? I can understand even some of the Europeans selling off their heritage, their children's lives. But the Irish, we did nothing. We did nothing to be guilty of. But we got this criminal government who hates us and is more interested in money. Leo was pimped from a start. They have that Zapone from Canada, an evil hatred woman towards the Irish culture as well. Then you have people who have no Irish blood, like Zapone and others like her, getting into the Irish government with the goal to end the Irish look, the Irish heritage, and the Irish blood, and the Irish way of life. Everything the forefathers of Ireland died and killed for. Every single thing will be gone. After Christmas, in the new year, we will start seeing a very different country, and it'll happen overnight. Thank you for listening on the Bond Show, the Gruesome Tuesday, every evening at 8 o'clock. Tune in. We'll be talking to Elvis tomorrow. Some interesting chats. He's been on some marches in the UK. And the UK are fighting back. They've had enough and they're fighting back. So Elvis will fill us in about what's happening in the UK and a few murders that the government are actually hiding and declaring that there actually weren't Muslims. They're trying to do everything to pretend that it wasn't a Muslim killing. So tomorrow we'll hear about Elvis as he finds out and tries to help a woman who had 3 of her sons murdered. And the British government are trying to hide and say that they were Asians, and that although fully knowing that they're Pakistanis, Muslims, and they killed those 3 boys for Islam, for no reason else. And they were lucky that there wasn't more kill. So tomorrow we'll find out all about what Elvis has been up to for the last week. So thank you very much for listening. The UN is a destruction and a disaster, and we'll be hearing on Saturday, we will be talking about the UN again with Eileen, who has massive amount of information, who has worked in the EU and the bankings in Europe, so she really has a huge grasp of what's happening. I've just been reading a few articles as I read out to you there. It's a destruction. There is no way we can come back from this. We will be flooded. Our population is too small. There is no way. Without shooting the government or getting the government out and redoing everything that they've been doing and closing, it would be a huge job. And I can't see the Irish being awake enough to realise Leo and the rest of the government are criminals to get them out in time before this. Anyway, we will keep you up to date. Thank you for listening on the Bon Rees Show. Talk to you tomorrow with Elvis at 8 tomorrow. Thank you very much for the knowledge on Wednesday. Thank you very much on the Bon Rees Show.
You are listening to Irish News Radio at irishnews.net. Email news@irishnews.net.